ये क्यों ऐसा दिख रहा है? हेलो, ये किसी का तरी तो भी म्यूट है।
अच्छा ये भी दिक्कत है, अगर मैंने ये खोला मेरा स्क्रीन, अच्छा ये तो टीवी पे दिख रहा है, आपके लैपटॉप में नहीं दिख रहा है ना?
म्यूट करिए।
Piyush, ready?
Yes, I am ready. We are
All the best and fantastic
That's what we need right now. Yeah.
coordination. Yeah. So we'll wait.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We are going to admit everyone at 3:55.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. But all the panelists we will admit as and when they come.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mute. Right, and I also start my video. Okay. Okay. Right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Yeah, pleasure.
Good afternoon, Gupta ji.
Good afternoon.
Sir, kindly focus your camera to the middle of the screen. Out thoda. Right, sir. That's excellent.
Okay. लड़की कौन
Yes, I am able to unmute.
Yes, we are just about to start.
A pleasant evening to one and all participating in this webinar, Make India Safer while Making India. On the behalf of UPL Limited, Chexcon and Shroff SR Rotary Institute of Chemical Technology, which is popularly known as SRICT, I, Pratibha Gautam, Head of Environment Department at SRICT, welcome you all, the invited dignitaries in the panel who will share their life-learned experience. Mr. Vikram Shroff, Director, UPL Limited, Professor Sandeep Roy, Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai, Dr. G.D. Yadav, former Vice Chancellor, Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai, Mr. K. Venkatramanam, former MD and CEO, L&T India, Dr. Jon Rohr, Executive Vice President, Chexcon AS Norway, Mr. P.M. Shah, Director, Industrial Safety and Health, Government of Gujarat, Dr. J.P. Gupta, Chairman, EAC, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, Mr. Ashok Panjwani, Executive Director, UPL Limited, and Vice Chairman at Shroff SR Rotary Institute of Chemical Technology. Moderator of today's webinar, Mr. V.V. Surya Rao, Chairman, Chexcon India Advisory Board and Advisor, RIL. Invited guests, participants from different industries, different academicians, regulatory authorities, participants from various countries, and all my dear friends who are connected with us on Zoom or through our live session on YouTube. This webinar will be of 2 hours from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. IST. Please do not hesitate to put your question forward in the chat box. If we are not able to answer the questions due to some time constraints, we will definitely reach out to you separately. Friends, few months back, Minister of Chemical and Fertilizer, Government of India, Shri D.V. Sadananda Gowda said that chemical being indispensable, India needs to take a big leap forward from the current 3% to at least 5 to 6% of global industry share. To achieve this, the zero defect, zero effect model, signifying products with no defect and production process with no adverse effect, is the future. Looking at the spate of unfortunate incident in recent past in managing hazardous chemical and processes, one thing that emerges out as the need of the hour is building process safety capability in Indian chemical industry. Today, our eminent panel is going to brainstorm on what went wrong, what could have been done better, and the way forward for the safer chemical management in Indian chemical industries. Friends, you might have seen various platforms organizing different webinars in the pandemic time as a time-filling media, but this is not a regular time-filling webinar. This webinar is a path-breaking webinar which will demonstrate the conviction, and at the end it will display the commitment from the sponsors for raising the standard of process safety in chemical industries and roadmap for that. To stress more upon the theme of the webinar, we have Mr. Vikram Shroff with us. He is Director of UPL Limited. UPL Limited comes in front line as world leader in organic, natural and biological input for agriculture and the 5th largest in crop protection and seed company in the world. UPL is a global company that was established in India in 1969 and is now present in over 130 countries, providing a diversified range of patented and post-patent agriculture solutions for various arable and specialty crops, including biological, crop protection, seed treatment, and post-harvest solution covering the entire crop value chain. UPL tables to offer a solution for sustainable agriculture. UPL has its manufacturing facilities in 48 locations worldwide and a global workforce which includes 75 different nationalities. It is committed to research, development and innovation and holds over 12,000 product registration and more than 1,000 patents globally. Mr. Vikram is a part of leadership team of UPL and has been passionately driving continuous organizational improvement with his dynamic leadership, sound strategic insights, and outstanding people management skill. Blessed with the ability to look into the minutest details, Mr. Vikram has set challenging cross-functional aspirations for the company, leveraging the organizational value towards excellence. He is instrumental in making strategic decisions for the company, leads many of the function and has been responsible in the execution of several projects of the group. A philanthropist to the core, he is very enthusiastic about the social development projects and the educational endeavor of the Shroff family that benefits more than 5,600 students annually. He believes in spreading the light of knowledge through innovative method and leads a team that constantly strive for the same. Mr. Vikram is leading the war against COVID-19 with various initiatives. He is also the recipient of the Global Gift Philanthropist Award, Dubai in December 2018. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a great industrialist and philanthropist, Mr. Vikram Shroff, for his welcome address and opening remark for the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Pratibha. Warm regards to all the participants and my biggest respect and thanks to all the panelists for sparing their valuable time to make it to address us today. Let's go to slide number 1. So the thought of this came when we are realizing that in India, we need to move very fast to catch up with the rest of the world, and we need to do it safely. Next slide, please. Chemicals today are in every aspect of our lives, whether it's defense, which is need of the hour today, whether it's pharmaceuticals and medicines, agrochemicals, solar panels, mobile phones, paints, every aspect of our life is touched by chemicals. And as we want to make India a $5 trillion economy, we need to enhance our chemical manufacturing. Next slide, please. 96% of manufactured goods require chemicals to produce them. People don't realize the impact of chemicals, the positive impact of chemicals in our day-to-day lives. A simple example, before plastics came in, we were harvesting too many trees to make number of goods that were there in our everyday lives. Today, plastics are a slight challenge, but soon we will come with biodegradable plastics too that will take this problem away. Next slide, please. For every $1 generated by the chemical industry, a further 4.2 is generated elsewhere in the economy. Again, all the data and sources are highlighted at the bottom of my presentation, just to bring about transparency of where it is from. Next slide, please. The global chemical market, the global GDP is 86 trillion and the chemical production is 5.6 trillion. And if you look at the growth from 2007 to 18, global chemical exports have grown at 3%, whereas chemical production has grown only at 2%, because developing countries have been buying more chemicals and consuming more chemicals than they can. So global trade, and we need to think about how UPL will participate in the global trade. Our Prime Minister has said that we are not to be a market for the rest of the world, but we are to produce and fulfill the requirement of rest of the world. Next slide, please. India lags behind in chemical production compared to other vibrant economies. The United States of America, 20 trillion, 765 billion. China, 13.8 trillion, 1.5 trillion in chemical production. European Union, 15 and nearly 1 trillion in chemical production. And India is a mere 150. And as we look at it, India's chemical production is 1/10 that of China. As we grow to a $5 billion economy, we need to ramp up our chemical production safely and sustainably. And I want to emphasize, safety and sustainability have to be the pillars on which we build our chemical industry. Next slide, please. So as we look at the state of the economy, the state of the world, in the last few months with COVID, a lot of assumptions, a lot of things have completely changed. When we look at the statistics, India's chemical imports, 58 billion. We import a lot from China, USA, small state like Singapore, Saudi Arabia, of course, Korea, and others. Where do we export to? Proudly, we export to the US, we export to China, we export to Brazil, UAE, Germany. We have a robust manufacturing capability, but let's look at our imports versus our exports. Indian domestic consumption of chemicals is estimated at anything between 130 billion to 140 billion. As the economy grows and the GDP rebounds, there will be a huge increase in the chemical production and huge increase in the chemical consumption. And we have to make in India and produce for ourselves. Let's take some very extreme examples. And I'm very happy to say that the Indian government in the COVID time has given a 7,000 crore package to the pharma industry to make it self-reliant, to make it independent. But pharma industry imports approximately 80% of its APIs from China. And the dependence is as high as 90% in some life-saving antibiotics like erythromycin, penicillin, amongst others. Fortunately, the sector chemical industry, agrochemicals, because of UPL's global dominance and the other great companies in agrochemicals like Garda, Rallis, and many others, we actually make a lot more in the agrochemical sector, and our reliance on China is limited compared to our pharma. But once again, I want to salute, I want to appreciate our government for having this 7,000 crore package to do good backward integration for the pharma industry. And we will also later in follow-ups talk to the government about how to make our chemical industry more robust. Next slide, please. Surprising, countries like Switzerland and Singapore export more than what we do. And here is a wonderful slide. Again, I have quoted the source of this. If you see, India is at 50 billion, Singapore is at 58, and Switzerland is at 107. Nobody can imagine that a small state like Switzerland, that you can literally drive around the whole country from morning to evening, has such a robust and good chemical industry that is safe and sustainable. And these are the kind of models that India needs to participate in. The other alarming fact, or very proud fact, that I was very happy to note, that the EU share is 50% in chemical exports. They produce for exports. Fantastic. And that's why we have tied up, later I will update you, our technical partnership, our learning partnership with Gexcon. India has a small 2% share, and we need to work hard and get our rightful position in the global chemical industry. Next slide, please. As we grow our chemical industry, it's important that we grow safely and we grow with sustainability. Today, technologies are far cheaper, whether it's automation, sensors, cells, that allow us to modify and make new chemical processes that are completely safe and highly controlled, and any hazardous processes have no human intervention at all. We need to build a trust with our community, with all our stakeholders. We need to have win-win-win. The industry, the industrialists, the workers, the community at large, and the government. We all need to understand each other's challenges. We need to build trust, and then we need to build well. Next slide, please. I must thank my guru, Dr. P Gupta. He pointed us to a fantastic company called Gexcon. And I'm very proud to say that we have tied up for a center of excellence with GEXCON to bring their global best practices from Europe, from other parts of the world to India, so that we can do in India, learning from the mistakes of the other countries, their mistakes over the last 30, 50 years, so that we make in India safely. Next slide, please. With that, I want to say thank you to everybody and welcome all of you to this seminar. Look forward to a great interaction. Over to you, Pratibha.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for elaborating the theme behind the webinar and digging the facts about the current realities and future opportunities for chemical industries. It's my privilege to introduce next speaker, Mr. V.V. Surya Rao. He is chairman of GEXCON India Advisory Board and advisor of Reliance Industries Limited. A chemical engineer from IIT Madras with 55 years of manufacturing and marketing experience in hydrocarbon industry, Mr. Rao has been enriched by more than 4 years of international experience at Shell Pernis Refinery. Hello.
Right. Can I speak now?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry for the disturbance. There was some connectivity issues. So yeah, I would like to take the opportunity to continue, sir. He is a chemical engineer from IIT Madras with 55 years of experience of manufacturing and marketing experience in hydrocarbon industry. Mr. Rao has been enriched by more than 4 years of international experience at Shell Pernis Refinery, SICM, The Hague, exposure to DuPont, BP, Chevron, and CCPS. Mr. Rao has audited several manufacturing facilities in Holland, UK, Germany, France, Brazil, and China. His experience was for 3 decades in NOICL, a Shell Mafatlal Dream petrochemical company, where he joined as a management trainee and rose to be on the board of directors. He was earlier active in Industry Association, ICC, and TBIA. His passion is for human side of enterprise and process safety risk management. Mr. Rao graciously consented to moderate today's webinar and will be giving a deep insight and proper shape to the upcoming sound and technical discussions. Handing over the platform now to you, sir, to proceed with the panel discussion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pratibha. Dear participants and panelists of the historic webinar, welcome. Welcome to the academic, manufacturing, and regulatory wisdom for enabling our Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Make in India into Make India Safer while Make in India. It is a commitment from all of us, and especially from UPL and GEXCON, to demonstrate to you action speaks louder than words. I wish to acknowledge my deep sense of gratitude to both the sponsors, UPL and GEXCON, for allowing me to be the thread that strings the 7 pearls of wisdom that follow and the pendant that preceded me in Vikram's trough. You will return, all of you will return with a pearl necklace at the end of this seminar. I wish also to thank Reliance Industries Limited and GEXCON for the experience wisdom they have been imparting to me on process safety risk management, which gives me the privilege to be amongst the stalwarts and galaxy of speakers who follow. Each has 4 to 5 decades of experience with the chemical industry. Dear friends, with the support of 12 slides, I wish to reinforce the theme set by Sri Vikram Shroff earlier. The flow of wisdom begins when I conclude, first from academic luminaries, followed by manufacturing icon, then by international expert who have dedicated his life to research and teaching on fires, explosions, and dispersion. You will then listen to the doyens of regulation whose feet are well grounded in safe development of chemical industry. It will be then followed by a Rotarian passionately displaying his commitment to spread the knowledge of process safety, risk management. We will then invite question answers followed by summing up by me. All of us are assembled virtually today have one goal. India should occupy the topmost place in world economy in 3 decades, if not earlier. driven by growth in chemical industry with no human or environmental adverse impact. Let me go through my 12 supporting slides. Next slide. This is dedicated to those who lost lives or injured in the chemical industry. I have learned economic development without human development is unsustainable. We cannot build industry, cannot build monuments on the graves of innocent humans. Next. Indian chemical industry is unleashing the next wave of growth. World chemical CAGR is 8% in the last 3 years. Indian chemical industry is 17%. Chemical industry growth rate, as I learned, is twice that of GDP. India's chemical trade deficit, as already mentioned by Vikram, is 15 billion US dollars. And global chemical production is this. Next, please. I am going to speak a couple of words about risk and leave the rest of the process safety to the rest of the speakers. Their risk versus reward, make safely in India while making in India. Next slide, please. Risks and taxes are the only permanent things in this changing world. There is no job without risk, and there is no growth without risk. Reliance, when it entered into polyester manufacture, it knew nothing. When it went into intermediate, it knew nothing. When it went into petrochemicals at Hazira, it did not know anything. When it went into refining, it did not know the business. When it went into exploration and production, it did not know. When it went into communications, Infocom, it did not know. And now when it is in geo, it has entered risk. People have to exploit the risk, but manage the risk. There can't be risk. There can't be growth without risk. Risk and rewards are first cousins. So also the risk and the loss. Risk has to be exploited. Risk has to be managed. Risk has to be owned. And risk has to be accounted by someone. Next. Now, here are some truths. Process risk management. Why people get hurt? If we don't know the answer, we cannot solve this problem. No one comes to work to go home hurt or hurt others. What did Socrates say? Knowledge is virtue and ignorance is sin. Why did people in Bhopal die? Not because it leaked, because they were innocent. Please understand, the Bhopal tragedy is the ignorance and innocence of the people. Why did people in Vizag die? It's the story is the same. Why did people in Yashasvi die? The problem is the same. People are innocent. They don't go to work to come home dead, nor take their people home dead. Next. Now, the real reason is competency. If people are competent, they will never get hurt. Competency has got two components. One is knowledge, which you can give, but behavior, you cannot give behavior. You can only observe the behavior. So the strategy is every employee must know what is the risk to him, and he should own the risk. But his superior has to be accountable for the competency of the people. Every supervisor has to be accountable. It is the immediate supervisor only who can observe the behavior. The managing director, the chairman can observe nobody in the field. So let there be knowledge and accountability that will drive the competency. Knowledge can be given by strict, but accountability must be given by the line. Next one. Next slide. Right, there are 5 types of risks I have seen in my life. Steady state operating, round the clock. There is a shift, they are supposed to manage it. Dynamic risk, every day some workers, some contractors, some logistics, some sampling activities take place. This is dynamic. It is created by the activities of the people in the day. Then there is emerging risk. Suddenly you want to take a shutdown. In large companies, 5,000 people, 10,000 people come inside who are untrained, uneducated, unaware of the risk. That is called emerging risk. The fourth one is what you have been now seeing it, external risk. I'm going to promise you, I'm going to make every one of you a PM at the end of this session, right? Because external risk is, I don't want to be killed by my neighbor. What happened to Thermax? Thermax is injured because of a neighboring industry. The last one and most equally important, which very few people know, is environmental risk, especially the heat stress and the UV exposure and air pollution. You have to manage all the 5 if you want to take India high. Next. I learned my experiment with truth with due apologies to Mahatma Gandhi and Mahadev Desai. A running plant is safer than a plant under startup or shutting down. A running plant is like Ganga. It washes away all the sins of the people who stand in that water. An emergency shutdown plant is more dangerous than to restart a plant shutdown. In a plant shutdown, you decontaminate, you make everything free and make it safe for people to work. But if there's an emergency, there's a COVID and it's shut down today, or there's a power failure, there's a steam failure, there's instrument air failure, then it is not a plant shutdown. It is more dangerous to restart. A mothballed plant or a shutdown for a long period of 30 to 45 days is still more dangerous. As I said, no one comes to work for getting hurt or hurting others. Absence of risk consciousness on the job. He may be aware. He will be just like Karna, who has been taught all the weapons by Parshuram, but does not remember at the hour of duty because his focus is on the task. His focus is not on his safety. That is where a supervisor steps in with accountability. Now, the last thing I learned recently from Vizag, when somebody asked me, if styrene is only a fire hazard and an explosion hazard, why did people die? And I learned after Vizag that all hydrocarbon vapors are first toxic at 10% of the lower explosive limit, and then only they will be explosive. This is a new awareness and knowledge which I would like to share as a part of my truth. Next. Right. How to reach out? Process Safety Risk Management Academy of UPL with GuestCon. I always tell Vikram, he got an award for philanthropy, but this is not a philanthropy. This is enlightened self-interest. I want my neighbor to be safe so that I will be safer. Now the strategy will be Amway type of a strategy. Strict will develop, people who will develop, who will develop, who will develop. That way the knowledge will spread. Now this is where I said I would like to make you a PM. I want you to have neighborliness and parishramik mitra, PM. You look after my company, I look after you. It is on trust. It has nothing to do with regulation. It is enlightened self-interest. Please develop friendly neighborhood approach to look at each other transparently in your own interest. Of course, you need ERCP and DMP. And what has failed in Bhopal, what has failed in Vizag, what has failed everywhere is community awareness is absent because there is no trust that is built by the organizations with the community outside. That is the need of the hour. Next. This is the last slide to the best of my knowledge. We can. This is what Obama said. But I am saying we will make safely in India and lead India's resurgent growth through demography, democracy, and divinity. Thank you. Over to the next of the speakers. What I will do is I will introduce all the speakers one by one quickly so that when they are speaking, their time is not taken. The opening batsman is Professor Sandeep Roy. He is currently a faculty with the Department of Chemical Engineering, IIT. Can you kindly show his video, please? Yeah. His research interests include chemical process risk management and supercritical fluid extraction technology. Some of his current research themes are risk-based process safety investment, risk-based land usage and planning, risk governance framework for emerging economies, and process safety culture. Thank you. I will, after introducing others, I will hand over to you, Sandeep Rai sir. The next one is Dr. G.D. Yadav, Padma Shri Dr. G.D. Yadav. Now, his CV is so long, it is longer than the 100,000 verses of Mahabharata. So I will try to make it into Brahma Sutra with his permission. He is a passionate engineering scientist and academician, if I can sum up. He was the Vice Chancellor of UDCT or ICT in the past. He is a Vice Chancellor even now. He has more than 125 national and international honors. He has guided 100 PhDs, thesis, 113 masters, 412 research papers, hundreds of patents, books, academician par excellence, right? The detailed things are there in the proceedings. It's very, very illustrative, and we are proud of you. We wish you get higher than Padma Shri, right? And I admire your starting other institutes of chemical technology at Bhubaneswar and other places in Maharashtra. Wishing you and seeking your support for STRIC. Thank you, sir. The next we go to the doyen of engineering industry, former chairman of L&T, Sri K. Venkatramanam sir. Welcome, sir. He is a former CEO and MD of Larsen & Toubro. He is a distinguished alumnus of IIT Delhi. He has come from campus to board, straight C to B, right? He joined in L&T, dedicated his lifetime to L&T. He converted the company from fabricated to technology-driven, taken it internationally, conceptualized and designed waterfront load-out facility at Hazira, implemented real-time strategic change to make a high-performance team building company. He has international business development cell, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Kuwait, Oman, Sri Lanka. He has put L&T on international map from India. He is the first Indian to become chairman, board of directors of Engineering Construction Risk Institute of USA. He is honorary fellow of the Institute of Chemical Engineer UK, the second Indian to be honored this. He is a recipient of numerous national, international awards. Among all, he is a sportsman. He missed his Wimbledon this year thanks to COVID, if I'm right. Less about him and you'll hear more from him. Thank you, Venkatramanam sir. Next is Dr. Jan Rohr Bakke. He is 60 years young, 10 years younger to me, Jan. He is a Norwegian. He is a doctorate from the University of Bergen in applied mathematics. He is a director of global business development of GEXCON. Simultaneously, he is also adjunct professor technical safety for the last 24 years. He is a specialist in safety technology for Statoil in various functions for more than 12 years. He has more than 23 years with GEXCON, total more than 35 years of experience. When they say, when you see color, think of Jensen Nicholson. When you hear a fire and explosion, think of Jan Rohr Bakke, because his specialization is fire, explosion, fire safety, technical safety, risk analysis, management. He is the chairman of Process Safety Conference Committee of Institute of Oil and Gas Producers. He renders expert advice on QRA. He is an expert who has learned a lot from Piper Alpha, Lark Hall explosion, Buncefield explosion, which he taught me. You want to hear more about him or more from him? Maybe more from him. Thank you, Jan. Then comes Sri P.M. Shah. He's a mechanical engineer, Shah Saab. Right. Thank you for coming. He's the youngest among the lot, I think. Right. It's a great honor to have you on the panel. He's a mechanical engineer with an MBA degree, worked with private companies, Kilburn and Alembic Limited. He was selected by Gujarat's Public Service Commission as a deputy director of DISH, both for Ahmedabad and Vadodara. He was promoted as a joint director. He is currently Director of Industrial Safety and Health for Gujarat. He has presented various papers on industrial safety and health. He is the Academic Council member of the ITM University. He is a Chairman Expert Committee on Occupational Health and Safety of Gujarat, Member Expert Committee Review of Occupational Health and Safety of Government of India, and Member Technical Expert Committee on Prime Minister's STREM Award. There are many, many more things you will hear from him. You will get a different view from the regulatory viewpoint. Thank you, PM Shah Saab, for guiding this seminar. Then comes the doyen of LIT, IIT, and University of Toronto, the guru of Mr. Vikram Shroff, Dr. Jeevan Prakash Gupta ji. Now, you remember golden age of Guptas because he has got a gold medal in 1969 BTech from LIT. He's got another gold medal from MTech from IIT in 1971. And then he has got a PhD from Toronto. He continues to rule, bring back the golden age of Guptas. Gupta ka Swarna Yuga. Ana chahiye sab. Right. There is no area of chemical industry that is untouched by him from process angle as well as environmental side. He is very good in formulation of policies and programs, and hence he is chosen by the Prime Minister. He is good in general management, strategic planning, management of large businesses and JVs, teaching, research, development. He is currently the chairman of Environmental Impact Assessment in MOEF and Climate Change, Government of India. He was earlier CMD and MD of various companies with Japanese collaboration, French collaboration, German collaboration, UK collaboration. More than 30 years, he has been a chairman, managing director of various things. He was the president of VAM Organics and India Glycols. He is the first person in the world to produce MEG from ethyl alcohol. Am I right, sir? Okay. He's got a wide reach. He is a trustee of Art of Living. He is passionate in teaching. He is a distinguished scientist. He has many patents. He has many papers, and he has been honored and has seen more than 45 countries. And many of you may not know, he has coined Swachh Bharat, which has taken our country there. Less about him and more from him when his turn comes. Thank you, sir, Dr. Gupta ji, for coming. The next one is a final batsman who acts more than he speaks. Shri Ashok Panjwani Saab. He is a chemical engineer from ICT, Mumbai, 48 years experience with various companies, Garda, Gujarat Insecticide, UPL. He is currently the executive director of UPL and vice chairman of STRICT. He is a distinguished alumnus of ICT. There are galore of awards for him nationally. Lifetime contribution award he has got from Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Petroleum University. He is currently working on his dream project, STRICT. He is a Rotarian at heart and chemical engineering at head. Actions speak louder, and you will see his passion when he tells how far he has taken the STRICT. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 7 gems, 1 string, and 1 pendant. And there are many, many artisans behind the screen. Over to Mr. Sandeep Roy. Thank you. Sandeep Roy, sir.
So thank you very much, Mr. Surya Rao, for introducing me. I would like to begin my talk by thanking Mr. Vikram Shroff and his team for bringing this webinar to everybody. It's very apt, and I think it's very timely. I feel privileged to be part of this webinar because you have so many illustrious speakers behind me, and I belonged to and it's kind of very privileged. I feel privileged to belong to that group. Since we are working on a rather tight schedule, I'll dive into my presentation right away. It is titled The Indian PSM Experience, Performance and Outlook. So this is the content of my talk. I'll briefly touch upon the elements of process safety management and look at how India is performing in this arena and what could possibly be done in order to enhance this performance. Now, if you look at the PSM elements, this was promulgated by OSHA US in 1992. In a way, it was a reaction to the great tragedy of the Bhopal accident. It's essentially a systemized list of focus areas that one must focus on in chemical process safety management. And as you may see around the circle, it's essentially a multi-pronged approach and a strategy, which is to say that no single element itself will suffice in controlling the safety or the risk. And it is, of course, goes without saying that central to the entire enterprise of process safety management is management commitment. Now, since then, it has been extended to what is now known as risk-based PSM elements. There are almost 20 elements now based on pillars, which are commitment to process safety, the process hazards and risk analysis, the management of risk, and learning from experience. In particular, I would like to draw your attention to two of the elements which have become very important in recent times. One is measurement and metrics of performance, and the other is the process safety culture, which is essentially the underlying the basis of our process safety management practice. The metrics which I have chosen to focus on are fatalities per accident, fatalities per 1 lakh employees, and the so-called societal risk, which is essentially a frequency versus fatality curve. You may see that on the right-hand side, on the y-axis is the frequency, and on the x-axis is the number of fatalities. The encircled point denotes the frequency of at least 10 or more accidents. So in this particular case, it shows that it's around 10 to the power minus 3 per year for 10 or more fatalities. That is the typical societal risk curve. Now, I will start by looking at inside India, and then I'll move on to what its global standing is. So if you look at various sectors in India, the chemical sector, which is highlighted by the red arrow, comes about fourth in position to other sectors. The most hazardous is the mining sector. On the y-axis, it's fatalities per 10 to the power 5 employees. Now, in general, it shows that the chemical industry remains a high hazard industry, and therefore it needs to be taken care of. If you look at the societal risk that the Indian chemical industry poses, I have brought forth here a list of different kinds of hazards prevalent in Indian circumstances, all the way from natural hazards to hazards which are man-made. And the white line is essentially the chemical industry societal risk. It is fairly high. It is comparable to railways, but it is higher than aviation industry, which is the red line just below it. Now, if you move below, you can see this green and red line range, which is essentially the acceptable risk region. That is to say, which is of course as per the UK HSE. So the risks or the societal risk curves, if they lie in between these two lines, it is something which is acceptable. So you may therefore appreciate the risk levels in India are reasonably high compared to this criteria. Now, if I look at outside, this is a plot of how the overall industry employee risk fares between UK, US, and India. So the the rectangles correspond to the UK, the lighter ones are US, and the red ones are India. So approximately, if you consider in India, the fatality rates are approximately 15 times that of US. I'm sorry, for UK. Now, if I look at the decadal major process accident rates all the way from 1917 to 2011, it peaked around 1990s, okay, and then it fell off once again. Now, strange, and if you look at the relative rates in the developed and the developing economies, it is higher in the developed economies compared to that in the developing economies. Now, the possible reasons could be a question of scale. And if you look at the fatalities per accident, it is approximately 18 or so for developed economies, and it's around 47 per accident for developing economies. Now, this has been attributed to differentials in emergency management and community protection, strategies in terms of land use planning around the hazardous facilities. If you look at fatality rates per 1 lakh workers from major process accidents, all the way from UK to China, the lowest is UK, and then it's followed by the 15 EU countries, then it's US, and then it's India, it's around 10, and for China, it's around 12 or so. So there is obviously a difference in these fatality rates. Now, this is because, again, of intensity of regulations, the enforcement, emergency management, and infrastructure. So broadly, these are the drivers which cause these kind of differences. Now, if you look at the US and Indian societal risk from the chemical industry, the red line is that of the chemical industry. And then the lower one, which is the blue one, is essentially the US chemical industry. So as of now, the Indian chemical industry, the societal risk is somewhat higher than that of the US chemical industry. If you look at this particular slide, it essentially summarizes on the left side the various issues, and then this letter A stands for fairly well-established procedures in place. B is either the procedures or the issues are in late phase of development and implementation, whereas C, which is largely non-existent or in early phase of development. The rightmost column, unfortunately, is not viewable because of these images, is that of India. In most cases, India is actually in the C category. That is to say, in most of these issues which are highlighted in the left column, India is still yet to make heavy inroads and mature. Now, if you look at the PSM practices, the challenges that face India are highlighted in this particular slide. If you look at the status, there is possibly an underappreciation of the operational risks and potential cost of accidents in the industry. Indian companies have begun adopting process hazard analysis techniques at the design stage, but unfortunately there is no single comprehensive regulation that mandates the implementation of the process safety management system. Now, in terms of the various elements which comprise the PSM, the mechanical integrity, contractor operations, investigation, and so on, the Indian companies need to enhance their practice. Some details are provided in this slide specifically, but I will draw your attention to the lowermost row. There is, unfortunately, there's a lot of variation in the application of PSM across various industry and a lack of standardization. And this is partly due to an absence of a nodal agency, something like OSHA, to oversee the implementation, evaluation and compliance with standards. So this is a lacuna which needs to be filled. Now, if you look at the various accident causation percentage by various PSM elements, this is a study done across US, EU, and Japan. Okay, the biggest contributor is essentially the process hazard analysis. The lacuna thereof, it contributes to almost 17.7%, followed by operational procedures, which is around 17.6%, and so on. Now, this does not have the Indian data, but it is for us to take this lesson that PHA is one of the most critical PSM elements that we must focus on. Now, obviously, if you look back and step back a little, what we are trying to say is all pertaining to process risk management. But if you look at the entire ecology, it is much more than just risk management. You need to have a good regulatory ambience, a good policy focus from the government, a reasonable and enhanced institutional effort, and also stakeholder collaboration. Dr. Gupta will focus on all this, so I will not be devoting any time to this. But some of the key questions which arise in the Indian context, I'll post it for you. There is obviously, on the regulatory scenario, there is a fair amount of effort needed to systematize the risk data structure and ensure its reliability. If you really look at the risk data, there is a lot of disagreement between different sources of data in the Indian context. Indian government has not yet promulgated a risk acceptance criteria. That is to say, we have not been able to yet answer the question, how safe is safe enough? And we have made no attempt yet to reduce public by good land use planning, which has to be really brought into a regulatory atmosphere. On the institutional side, I think we need to enhance the capacity as well as capabilities of various institutions that governments have put in place. And they should be in a position to offer good guidance for regulatory compliance to the industry. On the individual organizational side, I think it is important for organizations to look at risk not as a liability, but as a business opportunity. And I feel it is possible with some due care and acumen. It is important also for organizations to focus on risk mitigation measures. This is a big challenge because what to focus upon is also something that is not very easily understood or easily accessible. So that you need to put in your mind and you need to put in good tools and exercises to eventually find out where to put your money into. And I feel that risk has emerged as a single most important parameter for decision making. It is data driven and it is very complete a parameter. So Indian organizations need to adopt the technique of using risk for decision making. Now, this slide basically tries to capture the trajectory of safety management efforts globally. It started with technical improvements. This is almost pre-1980s or so. Eventually, it shifted to process safety management system promulgation. This happened in 90s. But currently, the focus is more on the soft factors, which is about the safety culture of organizations. It is what underlies everything that happens in an organization, including safety management. So just to show you my simple thoughts on what constitutes a good cultural recipe, I think we need to escape inertia of believing that we are good or not doing enough. We should set safety as a priority in an organization. The communications within and outside organizations, cross organizations, need to be free. And we need to have a more transparent system of sharing information about safety across all stakeholders. And ultimately, the management resolve to do all this within the organization is also very crucial. And finally, because there are so many stakeholders which are involved, you have the government, you have the industry, you have NGOs, you have the public, there has to be a sense of common purpose in managing the safety for the nation. This is my summing up slide. I would say that upgradation of the PSM performance should start with creating a good system for PSM implementation and evaluation within the organizations. But it must be coupled and backed up by the governmental effort on setting good regulatory benchmarks for performance and risk management and a more intense ambience for enforcement or regulations. One must focus strongly on enhancing capabilities of institutions, which is very critical to actually make all the regulations work. The government's effort on policy also has to focus increasingly on the risk management, but not at the cost of sustainability. And finally, we need a kind of a cultural makeover. We need to have a more open society which should believe in sharing, and we should be able to believe that we must have a collaborative engagement across all stakeholders in order to improve the overall safety climate and the culture of the country. Now, I hope, after all this and after all the deliberations by my illustrious colleagues, at least we should be able to achieve this much. I will end my talk here, and I will invite any questions from your side, but perhaps that would have to be managed later. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me for this very interesting panel discussion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about design and operation of inherently safer chemical plants and processes for changing the image of chemical and allied industries. I don't know what is happening here. Okay. So during the current lockdown, which is partial or otherwise, too many accidents have taken place, bringing into question the very existence of chemical plants and their operation. The public faith is eroding due to negative coverage in India. Notwithstanding the fact that chemical and allied industries, including refineries, petrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, polymers, agrochemicals, intermediates, etc., are essential and not optional. And they will contribute very significantly to Honorable Prime Minister's dream of $5 trillion economy. Accidents are part and parcel of modern civilization. If we step out of our homes to our workplaces, no matter what job we do or how we travel, there is likelihood of an accident. The frequency and severity are the real causes to worry. So what lessons has the industry learned to avoid accidents? Can they operate safely? And can the chemical industry be as safe as the nuclear industry or beyond that? So what do you expect in industry? You expect the most unexpected. What it means that the specific type of incidents or accident was not anticipated by the design engineers or the system per se while designing the plant or operating the plant. And of course, for which there was no plan for prevention and containment with no loss or minimum loss of life, plant, property, or business. Next question should be, was the incident or accident either due to failure of equipment or human error? And human error is the most important cause of accidents, more than 95% or so. So what was the inherent process of that? So I'm going to talk about designing process, chemicals which are safer and also operating plants safely. Was it due to the less attention to safety to save money or due to shortcuts in SOP? Were natural causes due to flood, earthquake, tsunami, etc. considered while placing the plant there? What about the molecular group of hazardous properties of all chemicals and materials on the site? Were all these likely causes of accident considered while designing or operating the plant? Was simulation, process simulation for hazard identification, analysis, and risk management was done during startup or commissioning of the actual operation? And who trains the new personnel on past accidents in the same plant? Is it hidden from the new recruitment causing more danger to both parties. So disaster is a rarity in the chemical industry, but negligence or misfortune can so easily result in devastating consequences. Many accidents are by neighboring plant or processes of which no knowledge is shared with them. So in the case of quantification of risk, we all know that risk is a function of hazard into exposure, and you can define it by any way. Supposing you say 0 is benign and 100 is LD50, death or exposure is 0, or you have 100, that is because of your vocation. So traditionally, the risk management has focused on exposure rather than hazard. So in chemical process industry, everything, including the man, machine, or molecule, has a potential to cause incidents. And if it is a chemical in process or storage or transport in gas, liquid, or solid form, it has a potential to cause disastrous consequence. That means we have to treat everything in chemical plant as a potential to cause disaster. The chemicals on site, which is not part of the process, can also cause severe damage if its properties are not considered while designing a plant. And therefore, you must know all your chemicals, solvents, and personnel who are running the plants and deal with them daily, because familiarity can breed contempt. So hazard is not restricted to the physical hazard like explosiveness, flammability, or corrodability, but certainly also includes acute and chronic toxicity, carcinogenicity, and ecological toxicity, which is very well known. However, hazard must include global threats such as global warming, stratospheric ozone depletion, resource depletion, and bioaccumulation and persistent chemicals. Intrinsically hazardous properties constitute those issues that can be addressed through proper design or redesign of chemistry and chemicals. So in the case of circumstantial hazard, it is well known. What is intrinsic hazard? That is related to the molecular structure, and that can induce toxicity. Can it be reduced to manifest the hazard? Inherent safety from accident and terrorism, can it be brought into the molecule itself? And can it lead to increased potential profitability? So in the case of design of safer chemicals, one has to look at the advances in molecular toxicology and the relationship between chemical structure and important property exploited for industrial application, which are the basic tools. So synthesis using catalysis, and in future beyond 2054 we'll have to use renewable resources. So currently it is being done. So atom economy, solvent-less conditions will be the hallmark of safer chemistry. So for a safer chemistry, if you want to design a new molecule which is safe, can you redesign an existing molecule? Supposing a carcinogenous dye is there, can we redesign to make it safe? Can we increase the user safety? Can we increase the transportation safety? But how do you manufacture a given chemical inherently safe or otherwise? And what is the limit of our smartness in tailor making a molecule or product? And what about the currently manufactured chemicals and the plants? So we have to ponder on all this. So if you want to design a safer chemical, you want a new chemical, you do structural design, you can do process simulations, you can do molecular simulations, and you design a new chemical that is safe and equally efficacious. However, if you have an existing toxic chemical, you can do the structural redesign and you have a modified chemical that is safe and efficacious. So for example, therefore, we need a fundamental change in our education system. We must have increased awareness of the concept of designing safer chemicals, establishing the scientific, technical, and economic credibility of the concept, effecting a sharper focus on chemicals of concern, and greater emphasis on mechanistic or structure activity relationship research in toxicology, and revision in the concepts and practices in chemical education. And this is where major participation by the chemical industry is needed. So you have an industrial efficacy of chemicals. So you have normally an industrial synthetic chemist, you get pharmacological, biochemical, toxicological effect. Then you have a medicinal or pesticide chemist, for example, in the case of UPL, or you have another new hybrid of scientists and green engineers, where here they use all these knowledge to design a new chemical which is better than the existing one. So I had the honor of sharing my office with Professor Trevor Klest, and what he said when he wrote some of these books, what you don't have can't leak. So if you develop, design, operate, and control a chemical process such that the consequence is reduced because of different chemistry or different chemicals, conditions, or simplicity, wouldn't the safety of the plant be improved? And is this not better than the layers of protection, many of these going up to 7? So we have to introduce inherently safer plant concepts in preparation for consequence examination. And this is the objective of this synthesis and evaluation. So in the inherently safer safety structure, that is the part of conceptual process synthesis, which consists of hazard identification, hazard evaluation, and inherent safety evaluation. So you know many of the physical chemical properties of the chemicals and consequences of accidental combination of one with another on the same plot. Somebody A accidentally spills and reacts with B, what will happen? In other words, you must know all the properties of the chemical and also have this safety data ready. In fact, many hazards are there. You know that whether it is fire, and majority of the plants we see there is a fire because of some leak, or explosion, and the toxicity which is in the environment, maybe pesticide, fungicide, and ultimately nature of product. What happens with them? So inherently, the molecular groups, we must know which molecular groups are inherently toxic or have a fire hazard. And all these must be known before you look at the chemical and create all these databases. In fact, my personal belief is that you must know what your neighbors are doing and which chemicals they are using and what hazard is likely to be there from their accidents to your plants. So you have to reduce the inherent safety of the inherent hazard and improve the protection layer. So either you reduce or eliminate the inherent hazard. So therefore you have material energy where inherent in the material or chemistry, the process variables, how the chemistry works in the process, or you improve the inherent protection capability, or you give reduced risk to everybody concerned. And we all know any accident has 3 components. One, there is a trigger, that is initiation. The next is a propagation, and the final is termination. So in loss prevention goal, it is always expected that we will have minimum probability that the accident begins. That means you have to anticipate and be prepared. Or you have the maximum probability that the consequence terminates benignly, even if it starts, or if you minimize the consequence if it terminates malignantly. So inherently safer strategies can impact the accident process of any of these 3 processes. So there are many process hazard managements. I won't go into the details of this, but what I would like to tell you, a chemical manufacturing process is inherently safer if it reduces or eliminates the hazards associated with the materials and operations used in the process. And this reduction or elimination is permanent and inseparable. Mark the words permanent and inseparable. So in the inherent strategy, we have elimination of hazard by using materials and processes which are non-hazardous. That is number 1. Number 2, you have passive strategies like minimizing the hazard by process equipment design, features which will reduce either the probability or consequence of the hazard without active functioning. Third is the active, using controls, this is during the plant operation, safety interlocks and emergency shutdown systems to detect and correct process deviation. And the procedural is using operating procedures, strategic administrative checks, emergency response, and other management approaches to prevent incidents or to minimize the consequence. These are presented in the order of relative. That means inherently we should make our plant safer. And the other strategy is, this is which I normally call as MSMS, that is minimize, use smaller quantities of hazardous materials, intensification or continuous processes. For example, there are many processes in pharma industry, okay, which use highly hazardous chemicals, and these are batch processes. In fact, all of these processes must be continuous because you have less inventory. Then substitute, replace a material with less hazardous substance. Moderate, use less hazardous conditions. In fact, it means catalytic processes, less hazardous form of material, and it will definitely have less impact. Or simplify, design facilities which eliminate unnecessary complexity and make operating errors less likely, and which are forgiving of errors which are made. This is the so-called error tolerance. So this is very well known. So when you have a process design safety limits, all these operating limits must be wider. So there is a greater opportunity for recovery before any incident happens. These are inherently safer processes. And therefore, operating ranges and limits must be decided before even the plant is said to be. So these are the risk management strategies. You have inherent, which I mentioned, passive, active, and procedural. On the other side, they are minimize, substitute, moderate, and simplify. If these things are considered in the beginning itself, then you can have a better chance of reducing risk. So for this to happen, we require knowledge of process chemistry. My personal belief is that chemical engineers must know process chemistry. They must also know the thermochemistry, the heat transfer aspect of the reactors and separators, and many other factors. So a proper specification for process, plant design, and operating conditions, collation and appraisal of relevant parameters, and hazard analysis and operability studies, so-called fault tree analysis, has to be done. So this is a time when you are doing the process development, you have the maximum chance of opportunity for inherent safety to bring into the system. And when you go from process development to process design to engineering design and construction or operation, that opportunity is minimized. And only thing, the opportunity is in the form of extrinsic safety, which you will do when you are operating the plant. So in the case of chemical reactor is the heart of chemical industry. So basically 3 different approaches can be adopted. That is containment. There are many ways. I won't go into the details. Online detection of process deviations associated with system for correction action and inherently safe processes. So process control and reaction inhibition, many things, like for example, the reaction inhibitor. In the Vizag case, they did not have the reaction inhibitor or they did not know it. So time to hazardous pressure, etc., etc. Or process control. Process control is very, very important. And if you have a continuous operation, the operation becomes very easy. And so what I mean is know thy neighbors. In an industrial zone or cluster of industries, it should be mandatory for all factories to let the neighbors know what chemicals and materials they use and processes without disclosing the secrets. For instance, the maximum operating conditions and preparedness for accident prevention and propagation. This will help the neighboring sites to be ready with emergency plan should there be an accident or a fire or catastrophe. This does not happen, so there is a lot of secrecy. So finally, my concluding remarks, chemical business has an inherent hazard which should be mitigated by designing, operating plants safely. Inherently safer plant design is a must. All degree programs in chemical and biological sciences, engineering and technology must teach compulsory course on chemical process safety and risk management and have in-plant training of 6 months, and industry must facilitate such training for their own benefit. And they should also pay them some handsome stipends. Need of more centers of excellence for research and innovation on process safety and risk management in some leading institutions across the country. And Government of India must look into this. A National Chemical Safety Board ought to be established by the Government of India, directly reporting to the PMO, like the OPCW, to investigate all accidents and create a database and give guidelines to industries. This is not disaster management board. That is different. Chemical Safety Board exists in United States and many European countries, and they directly report to the president. The requirement of chemical industry are totally different from the disaster management. Public awareness programs must be conducted from time to time by industrial zones, which have colonies and communities nearby, which can be directly affected should there be an accident. So with these few words, I conclude, and I'll be very happy to answer questions at the end of the program. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, my dear panelists and webinar participants. At the outset, my appreciation and congratulations to Shri Vikram Shroff and the team of UPL and SRIC to take this timely initiative along with Gexon, the leading company in the field of safety and risk management, to build a unique initiative for the Indian chemical industries for effective safety and management of hazardous chemicals and processes. Just following two eminent teachers and professors whom I always respect. So it's nice that this tone has been set. This initiative could not have come at a more opportune time because the complexities in the corporate world and the need to have sustainability and social conscience to entitle a right to operate has led an increasing focus on the identification of risk as well as the safety and risk management and mitigation practices in existence. We have had factories in India now closing because of the non-awareness of the sustainability and the social conscience under which you have to operate. SEBI has recently mandated under Company Act 2013 that a risk management committee at the board level for listed companies will be enlarged to increase the top 500 listed companies. A lot of chemical companies form part of these 500 companies. Especially for the chemical industry, environmental health and safety, EHS, in India is yet another risk which was earlier not given adequate importance compared to strategy, business, and financial risks. And I think in the lucid presentation of Professor Roy, he has brought out where we actually stand. It is time, like what Professor Yadav has said, Roy, before Roy, like we have the, I've also worked building plants for the nuclear industries, like we have the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board in India. I think we need a chemical safety board or an equivalent of the chemical for the process industry in India. And we should have the powers like the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board has. And I think that would be a very good initiative, at least to take up in today's time when we have, you need a very high level regulation for EHS. Coming to my own learnings, I'm as a missionary of process safety management in the engineering and construction industry, which includes design and process startup and commissioning. I will share my own experience in building together with my team in Larsen & Toubro, how we built a world-class culture and practices in an EPC organization over 2 decades. As a leader, my learning has been that safety has to be a core value. It's not a priority. It has to be one level above priority. I think that's the first thing that I've learned in the dialogues that we have had over a period of time. It has to be a much higher level than priority. We have learned that as a leader and a human being, I am responsible and will do everything possible to have all my fellow employees and business partners, including the contractors' employees, go home safely and incident and injury free. Small things like we've learned how to make their identity cards with photographs of some of the important people they work for. That is their children, their parents. I think these things have to highlight to them because, as somebody pointed out earlier, many of them who are simple people do not themselves realize the risks that they take and the harm that they will cause both to themselves and to others. We have learned that a good internal safety system with the credo of do it safely or not at all must be there, with every employee having a right to stop work alarm raising authority. This we have seen all good companies. Mr. Surya Rao talked about Shell. What we have learned when we worked internationally is you must give the power of stop work authority, at least to raise the alarm, to the person working on the spot. It has nothing to do with hierarchy. Like brakes in a vehicle, a good internal safety system and its implementation provides confidence to the organization and especially to its investors to move ahead with purpose and speed. When we used to go around after we had established ourselves as a world-class organization, the first question that investors used to ask is, how do you look at safety in your organization? What culture do you have when you used to get qualified with Chevron or with ExxonMobil? And we should probably tell them that all our board meetings start first with a safety oath. We have a safety oath. We also have a safety moment. Again, these are things we learned as we went along, and not that we had it to start with, but that emphasizes to everyone the importance that safety has to be right from the top. What we have learned is that hope is not method. Our learning, coming back to the actual learning, our learning in a fast-track manner started in the early 90s when India liberalized and the license Raj was removed, and companies like L&T were able to move into execution of larger process-intensive projects, both in the oil and gas, offshore, and the domestic industry. That was the time when the projects regarding diesel dehydrosulfurization came up. A large number of projects came, and we had to compete against international organizations. We were probably the only one competing. And that is where we really fast-tracked our journey into hydrocarbon, oil and gas, fertilizers, cement and power sectors with full EPC responsibility, with process guarantees competing against world-class companies to secure multi-billion-dollar US dollar projects. But for that, we had to build simultaneously our front-end and detail engineering capability, project management capability, and most important, our HSE and risk control framework to successfully execute and complete the projects of this scale. An important lesson that we learned at this time was when we tried to qualify for international projects overseas in Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Africa. The first filter of acceptability was not your net worth, was not your overall sales volume, etc., but was the audit they did of our safety systems and the safety record that we had. I mean, this was the first starting point. In fact, we had a lot of appreciation of the importance overseas people give to safety, and that is why even today, not many Chinese contractors are qualified for very large petrochemical and hydrocarbon projects, while Larsen & Toubro is qualified. We learned the importance of leadership committed to actively and visibly demonstrating IIF, or incident and injury and incident-free practices, and provide the vision and resources and training to be is very important. We took the assessment of DuPont safety solutions in a calibrated manner way from middle of 1990s. And, you know, because what we have learned is that behavior and culture and building of very good standard operating practices in all areas are so important. It is not just the technical side, but the type of behavior and cultural change that you bring in. We have all seen various companies have various cultures. And I think a safety culture is something that we learned a lot in working closely with DuPont in a calibrated manner, you know, by area. We started at Hajira first when we built the platforms. So to build a good, sustainable safety culture, we learned that every senior person visiting a site must do a behavioral safety audit by walking around the site, not only bringing up areas of deficiency, but more important, to pat the people who are doing a good job, because the good practices are immediately copied by others who see these people as role models. One of the important things we learned was, every senior person visiting site must do a behavioral safety round, but more important, he should, apart from obviously bringing up some negatives, he should concentrate more on the positives also. Focusing on safety critical tasks and monitoring high risk non-compliance is another very important area, whether you are starting up a plant, you're building a plant, or you're running a plant. Because I think we should encourage near miss reporting. We learned a lot on this during construction and also during pre-commissioning and commissioning, because if you don't have good reporting, honest reporting of near miss risk, you will then have a very large accident in due course of time. Delivering internally developed training classes and processes based on learning. We learned a lot from DuPont on this, because the safety management methodology is not a rocket science, but it is something that you have to put on paper, believe in it, and practice. It is not something that is just a piece of paper. I think one of the biggest things we learned is the behavioral part is more important in safety or as important as the technical part. So also setting up, we set up a safety management, safety institute at Hajira, more for our construction and pre-commissioning side with simulators and other items, because you have to learn to be able to do the job safely, and you cannot learn at the site all the time. So I think one of the important value additions we learned from other EPC, very important EPC company, overseas company, was to set up a good safety management institute, which is practical, which is like a workshop, which can have various aspects of practical training and simulation. When we work now in India and internationally, having over 1 million hours of incident and injury-free is a norm. You don't get approved abroad if you do not demonstrate over 1 million hours repeatedly in sites which you may have many thousands of workmen, that you can have no incident and injury free. So I think this is something, I just want to say that you can't accept that these are minor incidents and therefore you can allow it. I think this is something we have learned. It all comes as a part of learning. I think our international exposure gave us a lot more acceleration in this. Coming to the conclusion is that the importance of design. I think Dr. Yadav has already talked about it. So the first thing we did when we went in a big way into EPC was we first built our engineering organization. We did it with Chiyoda at Baroda for hydrocarbon, and we did it with Sargent Lundy for power. They are still existing. They're both 50-50 engineering organizations. For them, it was a good source of good high quality manpower from us for their projects. For us, it was the learning ground from which we grew on what we already had. So I think it is very important because, as Dr. Yadav said, the most difficult part in a project is the startup and commissioning. And during startup and commissioning, you have frequent stops for various reasons. And I think the restarting a plant under pressure when the customer is wanting you to start, I think if you do not have the right safety discipline engineering and a solid engineering organization behind you to work out what is the non-compliances that you're looking at and what is the design window, you're in for trouble. Another important learning we have learned is the importance of peer review. In all our projects, when we do the design, we have realized that you need a peer review done by another group in the same setup. There's nothing ashamed to have a peer review. The other important point is that when you get qualified abroad, they want to know in your design organization, how is the safety element woven in the form of the organization. That means who are the small team or that is responsible only for safety and engineering. And that will encompass some of the thought processes that Dr. Yadav mentioned, because the safety has to be a part of the integral part of design. You can't bring it in afterwards. Another important part is in this design is how do you make your design as much as possible simple, or what jokingly in IIT language I used to call idiot proof. how do it can be operated by simple people who can operate it without any danger. Keep it simple and understand to operate. I mean, nowadays, as I do a lot of Amazon, which I never used to do earlier, I can see how simple their system is to operate compared to some of the other systems. Lastly, you need very good knowledge, like JustCon is bringing in on flame and propagation and explosion. You need basic knowledge of capability. Either you have it in-house or you must have people who know how to outsource it but have the appreciation of it, like hazard, the fire and explosion analysis, quantity risk assessment, bow tie analysis, because you have fire and gas mapping studies. All this we have to routinely do for our overseas projects. Some of it we have in-house, some of it we have to source. So if you can build this envelope where you have behavior, you have very good initial people with you in capability and competence to absorb this behavior and the technical part, you have the scale, you have very high quality leadership which rewards your thinking in this design as a core value. And on the end of it, you have the full design house and the full construction capability and the full fabrication capability. You build a very unbeatable organization. Finally, I'd like to close with a little bit of a adaptation of thoughts on Confucius, the famous Chinese philosopher. He said, man has 3 ways of learning. Firstly, by meditation. This is the noblest. Secondly, by imitation. This is the easiest. And thirdly, by experience. This is often the bitterest. Now, just converting it to safety as a core value, meditation includes systematic techniques such as hazard and operability studies, design calculation, having good risk management, standard operating procedures, behavioral training, and so on. Imitation includes learning from the experience of others. As I used to always jokingly say in IIT days, nakal ke vaste bhi akal chahiye. So you have to learn from the experience of others as described in design standards, codes of practices, books, and accident reports. And lastly, what is experience? Experience is waiting until we have an accident ourselves. I think that is something we need to avoid. So I think thank you very much. I think it's been an opportunity for me. I joined LAT when it was a 2-digit crore revenue company. When I retired, it was 125,000 crore company. So I've seen along with my seniors and all our team what it is to build a company of international standards in this difficult area of engineering and process controls and process intensive commissioning. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I commend Kishore, Mr. Shroff and his team for having taken this initiative. Thank you.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
I would like to say that I'm honored to be invited to be part of this great event, initiating this first Center of Excellence for Process Safety in India. I've been listening with great interest to the previous panelists, and I would like to indulge in a small digression. In Norway, we have a sport which I don't think is common in India, which is called ski jumping. It's on snow, hills where you can fly maybe 150 meters through the air. And when I was a kid, we had a ski jumper called Virkula, and he was the best. So there was a saying that jumping after Virkula is really not something that you are looking forward to, because you would never beat him. And I feel a bit like that after now having listened to the other panelists. Anyway, please note that I have prepared a more detailed presentation about GEXCON, which I will not go into here, but it will be provided to you. I'd like to mention, and that is also highlighted there, that we in GEXCON adhere to a number of UN's sustainability goals, as I said, described in the detailed presentation. Now, this is about process safety, and this includes prevention, mitigation, and control of unintentional releases of chemicals or energy or other hazardous materials that could give rise to major accidents impacting on a large number of people, on the environment, and also resulting in large damage to assets. Major accidents, they occur with a much lower frequency than occupational safety incidents. This is the main reason why there has been historically less focus on process safety than on occupational safety. Indeed, this is the case, I think, also for India. To change an entire industry, particularly in a large country like yours, will have to be a principal activity driven from the very top. And I think this has been highlighted also by the previous speaker. It must be understood that costs are significant and this will take time. But as the famous Trevor Kletz once expressed, if you think safety is expensive, try an accident. Luckily, however, a shift towards a safer industry has been experienced in, for example, oil and gas industry, particularly after the Piper Alpha accident in 1988. So learnings are available and they are relevant. I was actually an expert witness in the Piper Alpha inquiry as well as in the subsequent court case. The Center of Excellence will be established at the Shroff SR Rotary Institute of Chemical Technology, or SRICT, in Bharuch, with GEXCON as a knowledge partner, and we will be supported by the University of Bergen in Norway. This is in line with the Memorandum of Understanding signed between the UPL Group and GEXCON during the visit of the Honorable Prime Minister of Norway, Mrs. Erna Solberg. The University of Bergen is actually a majority owner of what is called NORS, Norwegian Research Center, which again owns GEXCON. So in that sense, we are actually part of the university. GEXCON started research on major accidents in the late 1970s, initially on dust and gas explosions. This research focused on both experimental work to learn about and understand accident types like toxic and flammable dispersion, explosions, and fire, and to develop calculation methods. The most advanced one we have is FLAX, to be able to estimate consequences of accidents. All this so that the best mitigation measures could be identified and effects quantified. And of course, the focus is to make industry safer, to save lives, to save the environment and assets. Where we are today, with regard to understanding and analyzing accidents and their causes, has taken more than 40 years, and it has cost of the order of $100 million US. Today, GEXCON has a worldwide presence with offices in 12 countries, including 2 in India, in Mumbai and Pune. Our focus is thrice or threefold. We do research and software development, we do experimental work, and we do consulting work. And why these 3? Well, it allows us to support our R&D with knowledge based on experimental work. Of course, it is the reality that determines what to do. And our work in consulting allows us to shape our research and development focus to the requirements of society. We need to know what is actually the problem. The objective of the planned Center of Excellence is to make knowledge and tools available to Indian institutions and industry, so that you can benefit from what has been done elsewhere and subsequently improve on it, to the benefit of industry and society in India and worldwide. Note that a major accident in one country and in one company will, in many cases, impact on the industry as a whole, in particular on the society's acceptance of the existence of the industry and on the permit to operate, which is given by authorities. So sharing of safety knowledge is of key importance. And that, of course, is a main issue, main focus of such a center of excellence. But please do not fall into the trap of thinking that this can be done quickly and come at no cost. In my view, my personal view that is, it may take 5 years or more to get a self-sustained center of excellence in process safety up and running. You do need to involve experts with the required experience, and you must allocate sufficient and competent personnel resources and required facilities. It is highly recommended that regulatory authorities, workers' representatives, the industry itself, and research and teaching institutions cooperate on this development. They are stakeholders, and they should be involved in guiding the direction of the Center of Excellence. Then, safety regulations that are appropriate for process safety management can be implemented in a practical way by industry. And this is important because sometimes regulations cannot be, maybe we have seen examples that cannot really be practically implemented. So this is a very key issue. And again, the focus is on saving lives, environment, and assets. Universities or teaching institutions are important because they will enable young people with the right skills and right attitudes and make them available for industry. So, what could the contribution of the first Center of Excellence in Process Safety in India be? It is not for me to give a complete solution or answer here, but I can come up with a brief list, some examples. One thing that I think should be done is to collect information on accidents in India, on their root causes, and on what can be learned from them. Then this needs to be distributed to industry. Do not keep it as company confidential information. Safety is, as I mentioned before, in the interest of all. A main problem when it comes to understanding process safety is that the number of major accidents is relatively small. Hence, the basis for learning is also somewhat small. Therefore, one should also collect information on incidents where it almost went wrong, or which almost made it to become a major accident, that just by a small change of some parameter could have become a major accident. Because then the number of cases that you can learn from will be much higher. There is more to learn. I would like to mention an example. The International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, IOGP, they formed in 2012 a committee called the Process Safety Subcommittee, where one of the efforts were to collect and distribute information on process safety incidents. This has been done now on a yearly basis for the last 8 years. I actually chaired this subcommittee when I worked for Statoil, the Norwegian state oil company. I chaired it for 4 years before I left to go to Gexcom. Another issue is to increase the understanding of physical and chemical processes involved in and influencing the cause of major accidents, and spread the understanding of which analysis tools are appropriate for which scenarios, and learn to use them correctly. This information should be introduced in relevant curricula. Students should be taught. This should then be applied in real risk and safety studies to quantify accident consequences and how risk is impacted. Then an understanding of industry safety issues can be developed, and relevant research topics can subsequently be defined and pursued. These are just a few examples. Guidance from the stakeholders that I've mentioned before is required. However, I have seen firsthand the competence and willingness in India to undertake large endeavors, so I am certain that this effort will succeed. Then finally, if it is required, then I am personally available to provide initial guidance and leadership to this Center of Excellence on its path to achieve international status. That is up to you. Now, thank you for allowing GEXCON to contribute.
Hello. I think I am audible.
Yes, sir. You
I'm
are
audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, audible.
Yeah. First of all, thankful to UPL's SRICTA GEXCON to arrange a webinar on making in India safer while making India. See, I'm a director in safety and health. Everybody sees enforcement authority, but frankly speaking, the able leadership of our honorable Prime Minister and our Chief Minister, we should work as a friend, philosopher, and guide for the industries, for the progress of the factories, as well as the state and the country. Frankly speaking, let me tell you one thing, that in the state of Gujarat, highest number of chemical accident has been established, and MAH, major accident hazards company, is around 35% of the country in state of Gujarat only. And the hub of that MAH is a Bharuch, where the UPL has their own setup also. Now, I am very much thankful that for this organizers to be a part as a panelist in this stalwart in the field of industrial safety and health. Our role in this state is to guide and advise, not to the industries, and after advising, if nobody is followed, then and then we are using our enforcement powers. We have to work as a parent. Everybody knows that when the kids are doing some wrong work, we have to explain them, and we have to understand them and aware them. Even though if they are not following this things, then we have to scold them. Accordingly, we are supposed to work. And friend, government of Gujarat is ready to reduce the accident. And for that, many initiatives has been taken by the government. Some of the industries are not using proper PPEs and other things. So government of Gujarat has made some circulars, arranges seminars, and explain personally and meet the industrial associations also, and then explain them why this is required. Because as our speakers told us previously, that if the industries are safe, then their neighbors also safe. So our duty is to save ourselves as well as our neighbors also. When we all are safe, we can grow with each other, and then growth is possible. One example I want to quote here, that one of the biggest accident occurs during this lockdown period. In that accident, it is a human error, no doubt, but the lack of knowledge also was there. And because of that, beside industries has a fatality also. And everybody knows which is a factory. I don't want to quote. Everybody nowadays in the global competitive world, sustainability analysis is very much important in this recent global competitive world. If anybody fails in sustainability analysis, I think it is very difficult to cope up with the international market, and doing business is very much difficult. And if there is no incident in the factory, then the image of the factory, image of the state, and image of the country will be built, and the progress can be unavoidable. So we can progress ourselves like anything. One more thing I want to add up here, that we as a government of Gujarat previously running on 3 pivots. One, enforcement. Second, cooperation from the industry. And third, awareness. But if we want to run fast, one pivot we are supposed to reduce, and that's we want that enforcement pivot required to be reduced. But for that, the industries and educational institute cooperation is very much needed, and awareness program is going to be continued. Otherwise, it is not possible to run fast and to catch up the 5 trillion economy as our Honorable Prime Minister dreaming. As we can see that our department is committed towards safety of industry, and whatever required by the industry, we are there to support you, all the industries for safety. And anytime, anywhere, anybody calls our department officer, we will there to support. I am not taking much of the time because we are sort of the time at 6 o'clock. We are supposed to close down the session. It is a 5:50. Thanks a lot once again for the organizers and Gaxon and UPL and SRICT. Thanks a lot.
Please go ahead, sir.
Can I speak?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. Dear friends, good evening. Distinguished speakers have almost talked on all aspects of process safety. And now I have to think what I have to talk. I am going to talk shortly on needed an ecosystem to nurture safer India. But I am in a dilemma. You can well appreciate. I am going to tell you that Surya Rao ji has been my guru who initiated me in process safety. And for a Shishya to talk before a guru become a very difficult thing, because when guru speaks, everyone listens. But I will still try. It is a very incredible day for me. Particularly, I remember almost 2 years ago, I met Mukesh Ambani. And during the talk on Center of Excellence, he mentioned his father used to tell him that assets can go, but not a single life should be lost. Then secondly, he mentioned that he would like to set up Center of Excellence, the best in the world, better than Mary O'Connor, and no limits on the resources. This shows that the group CEO has got process safety as his second nature. Today, a young industrialist, Vikram Shroff, of an international fame, is laying foundation of Center of Excellence in the backdrop of many accidents which have taken place recently in Vizag as well as in Gujarat. I salute Vikramji for this extremely novel and pious cause of setting up Center of Excellence. I will call it a temple of knowledge. I will just touch upon the seriousness of the government and their policies about the process safety. Government of India has sent the directives to all the ministries to prepare a very effective national disaster plan. Secondly, NDMA has been authorized to prepare a national plan for the process safety, and also the risk part of it is being handled, risk transfer is being handled by Ministry of Environment, which is the ministry in which I am also involved. Question is that what is the center of excellence? What I call it a temple of knowledge and wisdom. It is a joining of forces by the educational institute, by industry, the regulatory body, and the public. And this becomes a common force to achieve almost a risk-free environment where either accident do not take place, and if it takes place, the effect is the bare minimum. Now, I am not going to talk about the details of Center of Excellence, which has been very nicely touched by Mr. Jan Rover from Norway. And I am not going to talk about the theoretical aspect of process safety, which is well known at this level. The question to me, what this Center of Excellence will have, to start with, it will have a lot of verticals. It will have a promotion of education, that's the prime objective of the Center of Excellence, basic research and the sponsored research, latest knowledge, tools, and VR training, support industries and regulatory authorities, support engineering companies to offer safe and reliable designs, support EIA consultant throughout the country for their safety studies. The most important, which we call forensic audit, it needs a lot of knowledge and talent. Forensic audit and audit of higher learning. Insurance companies and litigation in courts. Satellite mapping of all industrial clusters and to work closely with NDMA. The most important part, according to me, should be to preparation of guidelines for the corporates, large corporates and MSME, particularly for corporate social responsibility, corporate governance in process safety. Now the most important thing comes, what is the corporate governance in process safety? Like, you know, corporate governance is being regulated in India by the company law and SEBI. There is no regulatory body which is covering the entire MSME sector and the large corporate in the chemical sector to formulate the guideline and to be implemented on the lines of which is called OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as the American Chemistry Council Responsible Care. Each company, large company, should have a director on the board which should be competent enough, should have enough knowledge in process safety, and he should be accountable for the process safety. Management should expect the unexpected and strive for error-free working environment. Finally, we need an ecosystem to nurture process safety for safer India. We can go on talking of safe plant, everything, it will not work. We need at least more than 1 lakh process safety engineers and scientists in the country to start with. If this is not there, no amount of all kind of lectures in process safety is going to work. Master's program in process safety to produce 1 lakh engineers and scientists, we need to have start in all engineering college a master's program in process safety in all universities throughout the country. Capsule courses in process safety should be mandatory for decision makers and for the board of directors in the corporate. Because what will happen? The entire board doesn't know ABC of the process safety. Therefore, capsule courses is a must and must for the regulators, policy makers, and in the corporate. Setting up a center of excellence in each state of India. In each state of India, at least few. Guidelines for the corporate governance in process safety for MSME and large corporate to be strictly monitored by regulatory authorities. It is a must. It will create an ecosystem and the knowledge of process safety. Strict accountability, the most important, strict accountability of the regulatory bodies. I look at the State Pollution Control Board, factory inspector. There has to be accountability. They should be accountable for. Otherwise, ecosystem cannot be nurtured. And definitely my previous colleagues, speakers have already spoken about chemical safety regulatory board, similar to nuclear safety regulatory board. It is a need of the hour. Safety audit after every 4 years to not only for the company, but for the entire surrounding. It is a must and must. Satellite images of the entire country or the cluster of industry, because in India, you name anywhere, you name Delhi, you will find industry all around. Even in the VIP area, there are industries. Therefore, it is a must that NDMA should know what are the industries, nature of industry, size of industry, and nature of the toxic chemical what they handle, if they have to have an effective response. And last important point, which is very dear to me, because I'm talking about the ecosystem. Because after the 2nd December, our Bhopal tragedy took place, and I see it the biggest chemical disaster, bigger than the oil and other disaster, where in few hours, few days, 3,000 people died and 3 lakh people got affected. 2nd December should be declared by the United Nations as a International Safety Day on the lines of Yoga International Day, and 4th June as a International Environment Day. Because if this is done, it will create an ecosystem and the importance and of the process safety throughout the country. Finally, to conclude, some may see strict COE is a small step. Believe me, I envision this is a giant leap to nurture ecosystem in process safety for safer India. I salute Vikram Shroff for this. Now, Vikramji, you have skill of Jaxcon. You need scale and speed to make it international level institute like Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, IITs, IMM, or Mary O'Connor. COE should be implemented with a scale and speed what it deserves. Governing body should be headed from industry, like the best candidate for this could be Surya Rao or similar, not less than that. No limit on the expenses, what was indicated by Mukesh Ambani. And this should be from the operating cost of all your companies, which works out to be just a very small amount for the Center of Excellence. It is a temple of knowledge. Always think in temple, you don't care how much it costs. Visit to Mary Corners is a must to set up the standards for your own Center of Excellence. Action plan with time frame to be the most important aspect. Simply keeping making a curtain raiser today, but you have to walk with speed. We are all here to support you. You have got knowledge, you have got the people to support, you have got the people like Surya Rao, who have got the best knowledge, who knows he is a very tough taskmaster, he knows how to get the thing done. And finally, I would like to make a quote, which is a quote from Dr. P Gupta. We have many geniuses in process safety, but we need the ecosystem to nurture ingenuity in everyone now. With these few words, thank you very much.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Thank you, all the panelists, for your address and the points you have raised. My job is, I have to tell you what we are going to do in next 9 months at SRICT. But before that, I'd just like to speak something about UPL and college. UPL started in 1969 as a small scale industry, and now it has reached to the 5th largest agrochemical company in the world, growing slowly but surely thanks to Shroff family. Can I have the second slide? Going slowly but surely, but the reason behind the success is the commitment of Shroff family, right from Rajubai Shroff, Sandra Shroff, Jay Shroff, and Vikram Shroff. The first generation and second generation. Common thing is that they are committed to the community. Right from the day one, when the plants were started in Vapi in a small scale, they were worried about the staff members, the workers, and the villagers around. To see that the community is taken care of. At that time, there were no rules that some of the profits have to go to CSR. This rule has come just few years back, but UPL has been always contributing in a big way. If you see the last 4 years figures, UPL has spent 6.14% of profits, which average of last 4 years. Which works out to be 3 times more than what government is expecting. And the UPL has been spending money in all areas of focus wherever there's a need. Whether it's in education, health, women empowerment, water, helping the farmers, agriculture. Number of things UPL has been doing. Next slide. UPL believes that whatever we do in UPL, it should create an impact, a big impact among the community, and it should be sustainable, and we should keep on helping the next generation in a big way. As on today, our temples developed by UPL Center of Excellences are Srimati Sandraben Shroff Gyan Dham School Vapi, which is considered to be one of the best school in the whole South Gujarat today. With the help of this school, they said that why not take care of tribal students. So the UPL and the Gyan Dham school has adopted Ekalvya model residential school in district Dang near Vapi and tribal areas. And all the students are being taken care by UPL family. UPL knows the importance of nurses. In a health center, you need the nurses. So there's a college for Profile College of Nursing at Vapi. Then the UPL is from agriculture field. So UPL developed Center for Agriculture Excellence at Vapi, where the farmers are coming, getting trained, which fertilizers, pesticides to use, how to grow your crop. It's an excellent course. And another temple, which we are discussing today more, is Shop SR Rotary Institute of Chemical Technology. We call it SRICT at Ankleshwar. This has come because we thought that, we need technocrats, we need engineers who can fit in chemical industry and other industries. I will tell you more about this. Let me go to the next slide, please. Beside, doing CSR work, the best part UPL has done in the 90s and the beginning of 2000s, the new rules were coming for which the industries were not geared up, particularly MSME, for how to treat effluents, how to take care of hazardous waste. So the UPL took big initiative by setting up common facilities for liquid effluents, common facilities for taking care of hazardous waste, both landfill and incinerators in Gujarat. And all these facilities have become role model for all the industries. Number of industries, they take advantage of this, and then when their customers are coming from abroad, they bring them here to show that what is the commitment for the industries on environment. Later on, we got requests from Himachal Pradesh and Kerala, and we created similar facilities in those two places. And by this way, UPL group companies promoted by Shroff family are connected to more than 5,000 industries and taking care of safe disposal of the waste being generated by all these industries. UPL has also developed a consultancy companies on how to reduce, how to recycle those waste. All the laboratories are approved by Ministry of Environment. These companies are offering the monitoring services. One of the company in Himachal is approved by NABARD for environmental impact assessment. So all sort of services are being given by environmental companies. Of course, this company, these initiatives have taken time to mature, but with a time lapse of now 20 to 25 years, we have a world-class environmental group companies. Beside the CSR work which UPL has been doing. Next one. Shroff SR Rotary Institute of Chemical Technology. The college was seeing watching the progress. We just completed 9 years on 16th July, and we have entered in the 10th year. A unique example, when the people come from outside government authorities, they said this is the first college we are seeing, engineering college, which where the NGOs and industries are working together. And the best part is that this college is in the hub of chemical industry. Bharuch district, almost 30 to 40% chemicals are produced in this area. And what a golden chance, institute sitting in the hub of the chemical industry. More than 300 industries are connected directly or indirectly, sending their experts, allowing the students to visit their factories, giving scholarships, giving the R&D projects. So this is an example, a different college doing something different, and that's what we call, the UPL a company of difference. The UPL tries to not only make chemicals or agrochemicals, but they try to go out and do something, for the society, which will help in the years to come and which will help the young generation. And this is an initiative taken by Rotarians of this area, as well as the UPL, and there are many other industries who have supported this college. Next slide. The vision of this college is to strive to be a world-class institute, to impart knowledge, quality technical education, and develop leaders required by chemical and allied industries. Friends, you will notice that every word has been selected after a lot of brainstorming among the experts. We are talking of world-class institute. We are just 9 years old. We are already the best in Gujarat. And now we want just tying up the hands with the international company called Gaxcon to become, world-class. We develop the engineers. The engineers who have come out in last 4 or 5 years have been very well accepted because they are designed to go to the industry and work as per their requirements. We are doing a lot of research work. We already have one patent, and we have a master's program. We have a program on environmental science and technology, a unique program in whole country, which gives this degree course on environmental science and technology. We have a chemical technology. Beside chemical engineering and other mechanical and electrical engineering. So this is what SRSCT is trying to do. It is a plant, it's a small seed planted just 9 years ago, but growing slowly but surely. And I'm sure that in the years to come, all of you will keep on hearing about SRSCT. Next slide. It was in 2018. MOU was signed between UPL and GEXCON, as explained by John and Dr. J.P. Gupta. A dream of Mr. Vikram Shroff. And as he said in the beginning, it came because of his guru, Dr. J.P. Gupta. Both of them are sitting and present in this program. My compliments to both of you. A wonderful thought which is taking shape today. And the Dr. J.P. Gupta said his guru is Mr. Surya Rao, who is also present here. So Guru's Guru. So what a better chance you can have to make an announcement of Center of Excellence in front of so much eminent persons from the industry, from the academia, from the government authorities to make announcement about this Center of Excellence. Next slide. Friends, this is a day you will all remember, 21st July 2020. We are formally announcing curtain raiser for Center of Excellence on Safety at our college, SRICT. I know that you are on mute, but please clap and clap for this historic moment. Next slide. This is a curtain raiser. We already have supercomputers. The faculty is training, both from college, all PhDs in chemical engineering, professor or associate professor since last 1 week are going through a training by faculties from GEXCON, and this training will continue till November. There are 2 faculty, and the staff members from UPL who are also going through this training. And we have already tied up, thanks to Mr. PM Shah, who has given us permission, and Mr. A.V. Shah from Gujarat Pollution Control Board, about 200 government officers of safety department and environment department are going to be trained for 4 modules on process safety in 4 separate sessions. And this program will continue in month of July, August, so that whatever knowledge we have, whatever knowledge our GEXCON, who are our partners to help us, was shared first with the government officers so that we make a good beginning on this curtain raiser of our SRSCT, Safety Center of Excellence. Next slide. All of you want to know that, all faculties have talked about the need of safety culture. What should we do? How should we do? John Rohr was very clear on what should be Center of Excellence. Dr. J.P. Gupta has been telling us what is expected. Now we are just telling you what we are planning in next 9 months. And we'll come back. This is my promise to you again on 21st July 2021 with the progress report. And then what we'll tell you what we are going to do next year. The first point which we are attacking or we are working is to develop our faculties in process safety. I told you already that 4 faculties, PhDs in chemical engineering are sitting in classroom and learning on the process safety for next 6 months. Next. GEXCON certified courses, we are going to start for the industry on dust explosion, gas explosion, explosion science, process safety management, electrostatic hazard, hazardous area classification course, mechanical equipment to be used in flammable atmosphere. Very soon we are going to make announcement about these certified courses, and I request the industries to please take part and take advantage. Next point. Dr. J.P. Gupta was talking about master's program, and he has given the blessings. The master's program will be 1 year at SRICT, 1 year in Norway, University of Bergen. It will be on process safety. We are all set, and this program will start very soon, And I'm sure that people will love to take this advantage. Dr. P Gupta said we should have 1 lakh people trained for that. I'm sure that a small beginning will be done for this course. We are also working development of industry-sponsored research projects in process safety. It will be a classical example of academia, industry, supported by all the experts who are sitting here, who are part of GEXCON advisory committee to develop this industry-sponsored research projects at SRICT. Next. We are also working on maintaining data of accidents with analysis with the help of government authorities so that a proper record is available of what accidents are happening in India and even outside India so that we can analyze and share the information with all industries. We are going to assist industries who are interested in going through process safety management programs for their employees. A separate programs will be designed for every industry, particularly for small and MSME. Next. We are going to do high value learning audits of accidents and recommendations. We are ready to work with the industries and authorities to do these studies along with the GEXCON experts so that we can analyze and give recommendations. Virtual reality is a very favorite word nowadays. We are going to develop training programs on virtual reality programs. Next. We are going to have set up a laboratory for explosive testing. When we are doing designing the plants, we must have the testing facilities. And we are going to have a participation in safety standard along with the government agencies. So these are the 10-point programs in coming next 9 months. And this is the commitment or behalf of Vikram Shroff, UPL, Shroff family, and all of us who are sitting here that, we will definitely do it. We need your support. We need your guidance and blessings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for a bold announcement of the commitment of City and UPL Limited and GEXCON. Friends, we have received a lot of questions and queries, but as you can see, we have already exceeded the time window, and due to paucity of the time, it is really difficult to accommodate question answer session now. But as I mentioned in the starting, we will direct your questions to the concerned expert from the panel and get back to you separately through mail, message, or any other convenient media. I would now request moderator of today's session, Mr. Rao, to sum up the session by his concluding remarks. Mr. Rao, please. Sir, you are muted, sir. Kindly unmute yourself.
Dear friends, it is improper on my part to summarize the synthesized wisdom. The video proceedings will be available for you to have a relook and to transmit to your colleagues if you feel it is necessary. Participants of the webinar, you can now wear the pearl necklace with 7 pearls, 1 pendant and the thread. I would like to conclude my part of the moderation by saying, we can, we will take the country to #1 position in 3 decades from now on GDP in a safe, responsible and responsive manner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now stepping forward toward the end of the webinar, I would like to call Mr. Raj Tiwari, Director, Global Supply Chain of UPL Limited on the platform. Mr. Raj has managed the role of Head Technical Manufacturing for India for a year before he took on the role of Global Head Supply Chain Management. He has been known for successfully leading large turnkey projects and enable UPL for meeting its growth objectives. So with great pleasure, I would like to call Mr. Raj Tiwari to deliver vote of thanks. Yes, sir.
Honorable, respected, and our most valued invited speakers at the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to have been invited or asked to propose a vote of thanks for this at this special occasion. I, on behalf of UPL, JEXCON, and SRICT, and the entire fraternity of the Indian chemical industry, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all eminent panelists. A big thank you to Mr. V.V. Surya Rao for moderating the panel and sharing his perspective on how India can achieve sustainable growth in less than 30 years. Thank you, Honorable PM Shah and Dr. P Gupta, for sharing your vision and the priorities of the government. And and thank you for being the guiding light for the industry in the state of Gujarat. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. G.D. Yadav, Dr. Sandeep Roy, and Mr. K. Venkatramanam for explaining in detail the PSM type of hazard and the mitigation measures, and of course safety as a core value. Thank you, Vikram, for sharing your perspective, and thank you for establishing this COE, which is going to be of immense benefit to the chemical industry as a large in India. And thank you, Jean Rohr, for bringing the best-in-class technology and PSM studies to this center of excellence. We are all inspired by your great words. I also must thank you, each and everyone in UPL, SRICT, and JEXCON who made this webinar possible. Thank you all. We will win this war. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I feel that the greatest reward for doing is the opportunity to do more. With these great thoughts of Jonas Salk, I, Pratibha Gautam, Head of Environment Department at Shroff SR Rotary Institute of Chemical Technology, thank the organizer for arranging this path-breaking webinar, panelists for giving up the deep insight to the aspects of process safety in chemical industry, leaders like UPL Limited, JEXCON, and SRICT for their commitment, and participants who joined from different parts of globe. Today, we have made a new beginning with this curtain raiser webinar for the Center of Excellence, which is going to be started at SRICT. This day will be remembered in the history of SRICT. Thank you all for being with us, and let us be committed to make India safer while making in India. Have a good day.